Before we start, if you're enjoying these conversations, please make sure that you like or subscribe to Cleaning Up. It really helps other people to find us. Cleaning Up is brought to you by Capricorn Investment Group, the Liebreich Foundation, and the Gilardini Foundation. Hello, I'm Michael Liebreich, and this is Cleaning Up. My guest today is Dr. Nawal Al-Hosany. She's the permanent representative of the United Arab Emirates to IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. Before that, she was the Executive Director for Sustainability at Masdar, that's the big clean energy initiative in the UAE. And also, she was the Director of the Zayed Sustainability Prize, which was initially the Zayed Future Energy Prize, and that's where I first met her. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Nawal Al-Hosany to Cleaning Up. So, Dr. Nawal, thank you so much for joining us here today on Cleaning Up.
Thank you so much for having me. So lovely to see you.
It's a pleasure to see you, not in person, but here on Zoom as we record this. Now, can you tell me, whereabouts are you as you record this?
Well, I am in the UAE. As you know, I am now the permanent representative of the UAE to IRENA, which is the International Renewable Energy Agency. So I guess, I'm very excited to be doing what I love. I'm being a diplomat, but based in my own country. So that's a good thing to do.
Very nice. And let's start by talking about that role with IRENA. We had the Secretary General, we had Francesco La Camera on Cleaning Up. That was episode 87 in May 2022. So for any of the audience who wants to know lots about IRENA, they maybe should take the time to listen to that episode 87. But give us a thumbnail sketch, if you might, of IRENA, and then we'll come to your role.
I think the most important thing about IRENA is that it was established mainly to put renewable energy at the heart of the policy-making process. I look at it as the North Star for the organization to drive the conversation to just an inclusive energy transition. I'm very proud that, in a very short time, we just included IRENA 13th Assembly. And IRENA has 168 members and 16 in accessions, which is a great achievement for a very young organization. But I think maybe that's the key word, because for IRENA, it was created not to copy or mimic any other international organization. It's very young, it's very agile, it's designed to deliver innovative solutions. And we're very happy to win the bid to host it in Abu Dhabi back in 2011. So it is an organization that's very, very unique in its composition, but it's also very impactful in what it does.
We need to backfill just one thing, but just in case there's anybody out there in the audience, lots of them are great experts on this stuff. But IRENA stands for the International Renewable Energy Agency. Founded, as you say, about 10 years ago. Competitive bid for where to host it.
Yes.
And, a bit of a compromise with Germany, but in the end, it was Abu Dhabi that became the host of IRENA.
Yes, we won it fair and square. It was a global consensus about being hosted in IRENA, and yes, I remember Sheikh Abdullah saying one of the good things to do is to have an office in Bonn, and now we have the one satellite office, a small office in Bonn, looking at the innovation. But we also, IRENA has an observer office in the UN. But having it headquartered in Abu Dhabi, in Masdar city, actually, is something that we are very proud of, and we see the results of it being hosted there as it convenes more and more debates and discussions and solutions when it comes to renewables.
Now, if you could talk about your role as the permanent representative, because every country, you've got these 168 members, they will all send somebody to the annual meeting and they all interact with IRENA. But obviously, as the host nation, your interaction is very different, and therefore, I suspect your role is quite special.
Yeah, well, my role is, it will have three different pillars to it. Well, the first and the most important one being a PR to this organization is like any other PRs. I need to ensure that the interest of my country is protected, the position of my country is highlighted and explained and expressed. I also contribute to the policy debates and the strategy development of the organization as an active member state of the organization. The other pillar of my role, which is as important, being for IRENA to be hosted in the UAE, is to help position IRENA itself. And, bring to wherever I go, I speak about IRENA, the work that they do, ensure that IRENA's interest is being protected, ensure that, we as a country, host country, leveraging the expertise and the know-hows that is being developed within IRENA. And the third is, being hosted in the UAE. My role is to ensure that, all logisticals and administrative needs of IRENA is being met and protected, and their relationship with the different entities within the UAE is being active and more, let's say, leveraged in a very positive way for both organizations. So we host in Abu Dhabi the governing meetings for the organization. We host the assembly, and it is part of the Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. So we do that to kick off the year, basically. It's the first event globally when it comes to any climate action conversations. That happens in Abu Dhabi in January. Then we host the 2 council meetings, and ensuring that all the delegations, our member states are, when they arrive to the UAE, all their needs and all their logistical arrangements being taken care of. So this is what the mission is doing, and my role as a PR is to ensure that all this is being done smoothly and in a very successful way.
So I have a confession to make, because you've just had your general meeting, the annual meeting, and for all the times that I've been in the UAE, and for all the times that I've been to Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, and for all the times that you and I have worked, I've never been to an IRENA annual meeting.
No way.
I know, it's shocking. It's shocking.
It is indeed. So we'll make sure that to correct this for next year.
Well, we will need to talk about, obviously, we'll come back to in this conversation, the COP28, because of course, it's the Emirates COP28, and it's going to be hosted not in Abu Dhabi, but in Dubai. But I suspect that that will draw me back to the UAE, which I've not visited since before the pandemic. Much to my regret, I didn't come this year either to the IRENA general meeting or even to Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. But before we go too far, on IRENA, could you also just share some of the initiatives? We had Francesca La Camera May last year, but anything new, or what is consuming IRENA? What is IRENA focusing on? And this is a pretty important year because obviously you've got at the end of it COP28. So what are the current big initiatives?
So because of COP28 coming to the UAE, and IRENA has been very active moving as you moved into I think in the last couple of years the conversation has changed. We started, as you know, when we first launched Masdar and then initiating IRENA, renewable energy was such a niche industry, and it was literally very few countries have been developed strategies about renewables. Today it became a mainstream. So that's why with that in mind, the IRENA now, a new strategy, has been more focused on energy transition, clearly just energy transition. So, you see most of the work and most of the strategy and the work programs is linked to that. The other thing that is very, very important that's happening now with IRENA is moving from only discussion on a policy level into more of knowledge share on a practical level. What do I mean by that? So they have launched a few collaborative frameworks, and the unique things about those collaborative frameworks is that they link different players in the sector. So it's not only government an international organization, but you have government, you have private sector, you have academia, and you have some. And it depends on the framework or the topic in hand. You will find sometimes advocacy in that. So that kind of work became more inclusive and brought Irena a little bit into the field. They are also moving more into facilitating finance and projects on the ground. We started that, as you know, when Irena was launched, the UAE launched a fund with Irena. We called it the Abu Dhabi Fund for Development, ADFD, Irena Facility Fund, and that was to finance projects in these developed countries, renewable energy projects. Clearly, technologies are different depending on the needs of the country, and that fund has been fully utilized. So building on that success, building on the knowledge, building on the know-how and the experience that Irena and ADFD and the different stakeholders in that in that project or in that initiative had. Now we launched with Irena in COP26 the ETAF, which is the Energy Transition Accelerator finance platform. And ETAF is we started with a seed fund of 400 million from Abu Dhabi Fund for Development. But this is now moving almost closing to $1 billion. And again, the aim is to scale up renewable energy projects and funding in developing countries and fulfilling that by 2030. In COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, we had new partners joining ADFD. We signed with Irena. When I say we, I speak about Irena, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, Masdar and Swiss Re, and I know that in COP28 there will be more announcement to make. So, it's closing to that target and mobilizing actual finance to actual projects. This year, as I mentioned earlier, it's very important for both Irena and the region having COP and hosted in the UAE. So there are a few projects and initiatives that we launched with Irena. ETAF was one of them, but we also launched just now at the Assembly a very important initiative. We are calling it Empowering Lives and Livelihood. That's building on an initiative we launched earlier, which is Beyond Food. And the reason we designed that is because one of the things that is not being looked at seriously globally is clean cooking solutions. So that's why we launched Beyond Food in Expo 2020 in Dubai last year. And this now grew into what we are calling Empowering Lives and Livelihood. And there will be clear focus on women, and it's going to be focusing on agriculture solutions and health solutions. So that's Empowering Lives and Livelihood. And then we have which is a very important thing for the UAE and our leadership, which is education. We also launched with Irena Energy Transition Energy Transition Education Network. And that's something that is being supported by many countries. The networks basically is going to work with government, intergovernmental organization, and education and training institution to empower and increase skill sets in the youth. So founding partners of this initiative are the United Nations Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, the SEforALL, the UNICEF, the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers and Education System Initiative. So many international organizations joined, many government. And what we are looking at is creating a bank of resources that help educators educate youth and students on energy transition and the role of renewable energy. And that started by a seed initiative. We called it Educate the Educators, which was, again, initiated by the UAE. The aim of it is sometimes we have a very ambitious youth. Unfortunately, their educators are not on the same pace when it comes to their level of knowledge, and this has been basically the the initiator of this important project. Another initiative, which is also has gained prominence, we launched it with Irena on the sideline of the G20 meetings in Bali. It's called the Alliance for Decarbonisation Industry, and it was co-launched with Siemens Energy and 13 companies across different sectors. And the aim is to accelerate net zero ambitions and decarbonization of industries value chain and in the pursuit of the Paris Agreement climate goals. So many initiatives, many projects, and as you could see from them, they are addressing adaptation, mitigation, and what we need most is finance. Same time ensuring we have an inclusive approach by engaging youth and women in this discussion.
Thank you very much for that overview of some of the initiatives. What I'm very struck by whenever I sort of look at what Irena's up to and what's going on is just how the whole sector has evolved. I saw a chart recently that showed the growth in investment in the energy transition. Bloomberg just put out these figures. My old team put out these figures showing 1.1 trillion invested in the transition in 2022. And the figure for 2004, when I started New Energy Finance and when probably in the UAE, the first thoughts about Masdar were being put together, Masdar, the which we're going to talk about, the Masdar City, the Clean City, and all the associated programs with that. But in 2004, that figure was, I think, 32 billion. So from 32 billion to 1.1 trillion over a period of just under 20 years. And of course, Irena, which started having to, with the thesis of addressing the lack of analysis, the lack of just sort of intellectual capital around renewables, now just operating on this much broader front, right across finance, justice, integrating the solutions on the demand side, gender, all of these issues, at a much different scale than where we were, as I say, 20 years ago.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm saying I'm amazed to see how where we started and where we are, but it's not enough. We know that it's not enough. We are moving in the right direction, which is very positive. But I think the pace and the speed is something that we definitely need to push forward the accelerator. We push more on the accelerator as we move forward.
Indeed, absolutely. And what I want to do, actually, if I might, is sort of just take a step back and talk about your own trajectory that got you to where you are as the permanent representative to Irena for the UAE, working, on their programs, also very much behind the scenes working towards the COP28 success. And it links back through this organization I've already mentioned, through Masdar. So you ended up being the sustainability director at Masdar, which is where you and I first interacted. You were then director of the Zayed Future Energy Prize, which is now the Zayed Sustainability Prize. That's where we worked together. But how did you get there? Just talk us through what got you into the sustainability sort of career path that's led you till today.
So I'm an architect by training. And I was working with, and I don't know if you know that, but I was also at one point of my life working with Abu Dhabi police. So I was a police officer, but I was working with in the projects department. I was the deputy director of planning. And at that point, I did my PhD during my work with the police, because we were investing heavily in rehabilitating and building new facilities in different building typology. And the thing about Abu Dhabi police is they owned all their assets. So they owned the police station, they owned their staff accommodations, and one of the things that they owned were prison buildings. And as you know, the UAE, and you've been there many times, is very hot climate and humid climate. So clearly, those buildings needs to be air conditioned, and as you know, the cooling load in the UAE is highest than in comparison to different regions. So I decided I'm going to look into sustainable architecture and understand how we can utilize those sustainability measures, not only to make the building more efficient from an energy and water consumption point of view, but also from a functionality point of view, that the building becomes part of the solution, not only an envelope that is housing the inhabitants. And with that in mind, I went to the UK, where you are now, and I did my PhD there, and I looked at sustainable architecture. Going back to the UAE after that, when I did my thesis, there was very little, if any, talk about sustainable design, sustainable architecture, and this is when the UAE launched Masdar initiative. So I was headhunted and approached to join Masdar, and I joined Masdar in 2008 as the director of sustainability for Masdar City, and then as the city, we put in place the city sustainability measures, KPIs, all the indicators that we were using to monitor the progress of the city from design, build, operation, etc. And we started attracting tenants and attracting partners to live in the city. And then, Dr. Sultan at that time was the CEO of Masdar, was like, we need a corporate sustainability approach, not only sustainability for the city. So suddenly I found myself becoming the executive director of Masdar, in charge of sustainability for the whole organization. And as you know, Masdar City is one of the pillars of the company, but not the whole thing. We had, Masdar Clean Energy, Masdar City. At that time, we had Masdar Industries, and also we had the Masdar Special Projects. So, I started to have a corporate role overseeing all those initiatives. And then also in 2010,
I was just going to...
sustainability. Yeah, please.
Sorry, I was just going to come in there because for the audience, particularly if they're younger, then they may not know just how sort of astonishing it was that UAE was launching this clean city, and all of this, there was this kind of rhetoric about transition and clean energy and climate change. And, certainly, we were sort of sitting here in London and New York and going, what's going on there? Is it sincere? Is this real? Is it, because it was sort of, I don't want to say it was from left field, but let's put it this way. The other GCC countries were not talking about these things. Saudi was not talking about these things. Lots of oil producers, even ones, by the way, with very, very good clean energy capabilities, were not talking about the same issues. And it was very intriguing. And of course, it was something that I wanted to get involved. I wanted to kind of see how sincere it was and get involved. And then there was, I think you were about to talk about the Zayed Future Energy Prize. And suddenly I was invited to be, I think, initially on the selection panel. And you were, I don't know if you were initially the director of the prize, but you certainly very shortly were.
Yeah. So the story of why we created the prize is very much in sync of how the UAE does things. So, we, in 2006, when the UAE decided that it's time for us to look strategically into where we want to be in 100 years from now. And the vision was that we need to become a global net exporter of innovation and technology. And we wanted to make sure that we have a very solid, strong, diverse economy. And we needed to tap into knowledge-based economies. And with that, renewable energy became very core to the new strategy of the UAE. So Masdar was launched in the beginning as a company, but it's a more of an initiative. What I mean by initiative, like you have the Masdar company, but then you have that umbrella, which is the initiative. So I wanted to create a new industry and a new sector in the UAE. And that's why part of that equation was the Masdar Institute of Science and Technology, which is a university focusing on postgrad studies solely focused on renewables and sustainable solutions. And the ecosystem for all that had to be a city, a place, and that's where the idea of creating Masdar City. The other thing that came out of that thinking is when, everybody went on basically on a fact search mission around the world to understand where is this industry is globally. So, there was a team traveled around the world checking what's happening and who's doing what. And the one finding that everybody agreed on, that this industry is being treated in very much silos. So, you have the academia working on it in one direction. You have the private sector is in certain trajectory. You have governments have different levels on how they're addressing it, and policymakers clearly looking at it from a different way. And that's why part of the solution was also to create, at that time, what was called the World Future Energy Summit, and to bring everybody there. And this now grew into Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. So we started with only looking at energy, and then with Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week with water, waste, cities, and leadership. Then we discovered that we really cannot know, sitting in the UAE and Abu Dhabi, and we cannot afford to be traveling all the time to identify, who's doing what. And that's why the idea came, let's launch this global prize. Let's launch this award that identifies and recognizes achievements in renewable energy and sustainability. And this is, I was at the beginning part of the selection committee, just like yourself. And then a couple of years from there, I became the director of the prize until 2018 when I moved on. And that prize was also part of that big vision, because, when the UAE does thing, or when we decide to do something, we do it in a very pragmatic way. We look into, what has been done before, what was successful, how can we improve in the process, and then we start and we convene, and then we kind of improve on the way. And this is the story behind Masdar. To your point, it became like, everybody was excited about it. I have to be, optimistic. I wouldn't say that they were skeptical. We had some skepticism, but there was a global excitement about it. Before we break ground on the city, Dr. Sultan and Khaldun, who was at the time the CEO of Mubadala, were having tea with the Queen. Sultan was in the US and the Pentagon. So we were talking about it before, even not talking about it with leadership of so many countries, before even breaking ground in the city. Not because because what we were trying to do hasn't been done before, was very interesting, it's very much needed. And I think that's what created this global excitement about it. It is something that is definitely the world needed, finding a place where those solutions is being developed, addressed, and treated in a way that the UAE has looked at it.
On for you as well, with your sustainable architecture background, because Masdar City these were some of the first buildings in the region, some of the first in the world, that were actually being built in that heat, but sustainably. I'm thinking of things like the Siemens regional head office, really innovative stuff.
Yeah, you have the Siemens, and that's why it was so exciting. Look, we were all learning by doing. It was so exciting. Like, this was, if somebody asked me what was your the happiest days of my life in your career, I would say, my first few years in Masdar, because you had the smartest people working together and, learning as we are doing and looking at different solutions from all over the world. And, it's this corridor chats about certain things, then immediately we go and implement. You had the likes of Foster's coming in with very innovative way. To your point, we had Masdar, we had Siemens.
Right?
Yeah, the architect Norman Foster. You had the Siemens headquarters. One example of how the use of different materials and different shades. But we also tested different buildings approaches. So within the city, you would have Siemens, which is very, very modern, and then you will have the Masdar Institute at that time dorms, which were they looked very traditional in their in their design, because they opted for the thick walls, the solid walls, and ensuring that we're protecting the building from excessive heat by reducing exposure
with the very beautiful window screens, right?
Yes. And then you had, you had the laboratory in the city and for the office buildings, which was very modern. And they were both performing exactly in the same way. So both buildings had the same performance, but in a very different design approach. And again, all those being tested for the first time, all those being implemented for the first time, and we are measuring the results as we move. And that's why in the beginning, if you remember, Masdar city was self-developed. We did not allow any third party to develop the city because we were just, as I said, testing and building as we move. Now we allow third developers because we have the guidelines that that others can work on.
I remember.
So yeah, it was a heaven for an architect to be involved in that project. It was just which is so exciting.
I remember a visit there where I saw something extraordinary. I don't know which building it was. It was the first time that I had seen a staircase in the GCC region. Because one of the buildings, instead of saying you should take the lift, why would you want a staircase? In the lobby, it led to the staircase. And it was quite a shock, to be honest.
Well, all the buildings in Masdar city, because again, the way the city is designed is we don't have a lot of skyscrapers. With the building were 4 stories, 5 stories. But what we did is that we positioned the staircase in a very prominent location. There will be clearly elevators around because you need to be inclusive in your design, and people need to take the elevators. They should. But the center kind of feature, we had the staircases, and staircases and the buildings were the first thing you see. So the one you are referring to, I believe, is the one that you enter into the Masdar city from the PRT, which is again a technology that's being developed and tested first in the UAE and globally, which is personal rapid transport system. And these are, the small pods that driverless pods that you take from, you park your car, you take those pods, they take you through that station, and then again, it's a driverless, and you just key in your destination. And looking at innovation and in very early days, we're talking this was in 2010. So a lot of and then you go off and you see that beautiful staircase as you walk into the building. And then if you want to take the elevator, you really need to look around to find the elevator. It's not to be seen.
Right, it was exactly that building. It was coming out of those pods, driverless pods, first ones that I'd been in, and then you're faced with a staircase and not just an elevator.
Yeah.
So really flipping things around. And of course, the CEO of the Masdar initiative was this, brilliant, very dynamic young executive. You've referred to him a couple of times, Dr. Sultan, now His Excellency Sultan AlJaber, who he led all of these activities at Masdar, but he has gone on to be the Minister of Industry and Technology, the head of ADNOC, that's the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, and of course, now the president of COP28.
And before that, he was the UAE climate envoy for 2 terms. So this is also something very important in his career.
That's right. So he's been because I tell you what, there's a lot of buzz out there in the press saying, well, first of all, why is COP28 going to a petro state like UAE, whereas the revenue is mainly coming from oil? And why is the head of the national oil company running it? This is clearly, a catastrophe for the climate. And they may not know Dr. Sultan's background, both with Masdar and as a climate special representative. But are you getting some of that pushback or not?
Michael, we are very used to a lot of criticism of so many things we do, and we never really bothered because we are very much focused on moving forward. Dr. Sultan has more than 2 decades of leadership experience in government, climate policy, renewable energy, and believe it or not, the other day I realized this. He is the first CEO ever to serve as co-president. So having a CEO mindset is very different when it comes to leading negotiation and leading change. He served as a special envoy for climate change for 2 terms. He has been always an outcomes-focused participant in more than 10 COPs. He has a track record of delivery that everybody knows about. He brokered the US UAE partnership to accelerate clean energy, which we call PACE, to catalyze 100 billion in clean energy of emerging economy and deploy 100 gigawatt of clean energy globally. He is committed to driving the clean energy transition. He helped, to your point, when he was the CEO of Masdar, he helped accelerate adoption of renewables. Masdar is now the world's second largest renewable energy company. We have clean energy investments in over 40 countries. Masdar, I mean. They are operating 3 of the world's largest and lowest cost solar plants. He is, even as an ADNOC CEO, I have to say, since he took over that role, he's spearheading investment of $15 billion over 5 years in decarbonization strategy and its new low carbon solution business. He helped develop, or they are developing the region's first carbon capture, use and storage facility, capturing 5 million tons of CO yearly by 2030. This is basically equals annual carbon capture of forest over twice the size of the UAE. 100% of ADNOC grid power comes from clean energy, and this is an industry first. And he did commit ADNOC to reducing its carbon intensity by 25% by 2030, aiming to reach the net zero by 2050. And he has been very vocal that he is going to be committed to an inclusive COP process. He's working hand in hand with Her Excellency Shamal Mazrou'i as the UAE Youth Climate Champion, and Her Excellency Reza Al-Mubarak, who is the UN Climate Change High-Level Champion. So we see them doing that already. Together, they are engaging state and non-state actors, including NGO, business leaders, and youth, and indigenous people. So I am very, very excited to see a very different COP, because I think it's going to be an amazing opportunity to see how a CEO who is leading a successful business is going to lead in the same mindset and foster consensus among the international community. I'm very excited about it. I don't think we can see a just energy transition without engaging everybody, specifically the private sector.
I think I take all of that on board, and I'm, I hope the audience does as well, because of course I know Dr. Sultan, so I know what he's capable of and what his track record is. I think also one thing that's very interesting is how different the discussion about decarbonisation is in the wake of the energy price spike that we've had at the end of COVID and because of Russia's, horrible invasion of Ukraine. Because the discussion, it's not enough now just to talk about clean this and clean that and decarbonize. We also have to understand that a just transition actually keeps the energy prices low throughout. You can't just have a model that says, well, let's stop investing in the fossil and eventually there'll be a clean solution. And in between, it doesn't matter if the prices go up and so on, because it clearly does matter. So I think we're in so having somebody who can straddle from an oil company to clean energy, to me, is very interesting, very timely. I don't know if that's going to be persuasive around the world.
Again, we have seen, you pointed out to the energy crisis. We have seen what happened when only one source of energy is being shut down to countries that has been investing in diversifying their energy mix for years now. And, and we still globally have a huge energy access challenge. I know you've hosted Damilola, and I know you spoke about the goals of the sustainable energy for all, and we're still speaking about energy access. We're still speaking about providing renewables, and we are still looking at energy efficiency. But it is not, energy transition is a journey. You cannot just turn off or on a switch and turn on another switch. We are still moving in that direction, but it is still a journey. And we need to do it in a very just and inclusive way. Because if we turn off all investment now on oil and gas, I think you will end up having 80% of the universe without energy. And I don't think we are ready for that.
So you're right. The decarbonisation is a journey, and we have to think about the pathway to get off the fossil and off the emissions and onto the clean. And can you talk us through specifically that journey as regards the UAE? Because if we go back to the early days, we're talking, I don't know, around 2010, there was this target that UAE would have 7% of its electricity from renewables. And I don't know if it was UAE or I think it was Dubai first, and then Abu Dhabi said so. But they were very modest numbers. And I was sitting there thinking, hang on a second, it's really, really sunny down there. And why can't they be much, much more ambitious? And you've mentioned it yourself now. UAE has a target of net zero by 2050 for its own energy use. What has that journey been like from the first moves towards renewables to net zero?
Well, let's talk about what the UAE is doing. So you know very well the UAE is a first mover on sustainability, climate innovation, and climate action. And, we've seen this happening very early in the 2000s. The UAE is the first country in the region to sign and ratify the Paris Agreement. It's the first country in the region to commit to an economy-wide reduction in emissions. Our energy strategy in 2017, the target was 50% clean energy in the total energy mix by 2050. We are one of the only 29 countries that submitted a revised nationally determined contribution ahead of COP27. We are the first country in the region to announce net zero by 2050 strategic initiative. Our net zero by 2050 strategic initiative is a clear natural next step in our growth trajectory that it directly aligns between the UAE's development vision for the next 50 years to create new knowledge, new industries, new skills, and new jobs. So yes, we started with humble numbers because we always like to over-deliver. And even though 7% that you mentioned, that was the target for Dubai, actually Dubai reached that, over-delivered on that target by the year that they said they are going to do it. But now we are again, as we speak, our Ministry of Energy is revising our strategy, because I mentioned in 2017 we announced that we're going to do, we'll have 50 by 2050. This is now being revised, and our new strategy is going to be announced soon before the COP28. So there's so much has been happening and is happening as a very pragmatic, a very systematic approach. We understand, because when we started Masdar, we had huge expectations about how technology is gonna catch up. We actually created the master plan with expectations of certain efficiencies that they did not materialize. So we wanted to be sure that, we are not promising what we don't know if we can deliver. Now, because of the work that Masdar has been doing, investing in bleeding edge technologies with, some very brave and bold partners, now renewables becoming commercially competitive and for us in the UAE for solar, for example. This is why now the UAE has 3 of the largest, lowest cost solar plants in the world, not in the region, in the world. And we are investing in more. Our global investment is more than $50 billion in renewables around the world. We are in more than 70 countries. But in the UAE itself, we are now having, let me give you some examples of the plants that we have in the UAE. We have Mohammed bin Rashid Solar Park. It's the largest site solar park in the world based on the independent power producer model. The production capacity is planned to be 5,000 megawatt by 2030 with investment in 50 billion. This is just one site. And when it's completed, it will save over 6.5 million tons of carbon emissions. In Abu Dhabi, we have a Dhafra solar park. Dhafra is actually going to be the world's largest single site for solar power, using 3.5 million solar plants to generate the solar panels, to generate enough electricity for 160,000 people. Then we have Noor, which is going to again power around 195,000. So we started maybe in a modest scale, maybe. Well, I don't think it was very modest, because when we started, we didn't have to do it. We did it because we wanted to do it. We were not mandated by any global protocol to invest in renewables or decarbonization. We did that because we have a visionary leadership that wanted to ensure that we are not only diversifying our economy, we are diversifying our energy mix so we can secure our own energy sources, but we are also maintaining our leadership in the energy sector. The UAE was a leader in the oil and gas sector. We want to maintain a leadership in the energy sector. And as you know very well, and as I always heard, and I come and attended the Global New Energy Finance Summit to know the trends. And the fastest growing sector in the energy was the renewables. So, the UAE definitely wanted to be part of that trend as we move forward. So, it is something that has been done based on a very pragmatic approach, and working on it steadily, and we already have a clear roadmap, and we're mobilizing all our entities as we move towards this target.
So you are the new targets that you announce. You've committed to net zero 2050. One big piece of your activities is about the UAE eliminating its emissions. And you're also building, as you described, this big business, energy business, investment 50 billion overseas. How do you answer critics who say, look, for 1.5 degrees, it's not just UAE, it's not just enough for some countries to reach net zero in 2050. All of them have to. And that means you shouldn't be selling oil or gas after 2050. You'll be a wealthy country, a big energy business around the world. Why do you need to continue to sell oil and gas beyond 2050?
Michael, the day we're going to export our last barrel of oil, for us will be a day of celebration. But it has to be the day that the whole world is ready to live without it. We cannot stop production if the world still needs. We are a responsible energy producer, and we are a responsible nation, and global energy security is very high on our agenda. So for the UAE, we are putting every strategy in place with very rapid plans to implement it, to ensure that when these days come, we are going to be celebrating. This is actually a commitment from, at that point, he was the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, now he's the President of the UAE. That is a statement he said in the World Government Summit a few years ago. He said, when this day comes, for us, it's going to be a day of celebration because we will be ready.
Let's move to COP28. Let's go back just, if we can just dive in a little bit, bring some of these threads together. What does good look like? If you were on the last day of COP, or the day after, maybe after a good night's sleep, because I'm pretty sure you'll be busy, what would good look like for COP, for UAE, for Irena? Because, of course, your main role will be to represent and to help Irena achieve its goals. What does good look like?
I think good would be that, reflecting back, people would say that COP was a solutions COP. That COP was outcomes COP. That COP actually succeeded in fostering consensus on the best and fastest way forward. So building consensus on all our targets: mitigation, adaptation, and operationalization of the loss and damage fund. So, that would be something that we would celebrate. So if we look into adaptation, we are looking into setting the conditions to deliver our global goal of doubling adaptation finance up to 40 billion. For loss and damage, prioritization of support to the most vulnerable countries. And finance, clearly we want to make sure that we scale and improve the climate finance, and something that we are all working towards, which is the international financial reform. The UAE is definitely going to be committed to a very innovative multilateral process and to drive, both private sector engagement, inclusion, and accountability, and maintaining our legacy of sustainability, and that we see from even the choice of the venue. You mentioned at the beginning that COP28 will be hosted in Dubai. That COP28 will be hosted in Expo Dubai, which is a site that has an event has been working towards connecting minds and creating a future for all. So sustainability has been the mindset when we designed Expo City, and having COP28 hosted there is definitely a very clear message on what we intend to do.
I saw one piece of coverage about a specific cooling initiative. So it was the cooling sustainably to help over 1 billion people, that by focusing on sustainable cooling, that the transition could be made cheaper by $3.5 trillion. Has that started to flesh out? Is that something that that you and Irena have been working on?
Yes, this is actually feeds into what I just said. There's so many initiative and targets and areas that has not been taking forefront in COP discussions, and that is one of them. So yes, this is an initiative that is now the Cooling Association with the UN and Irena are working together, and we believe that there will be some very concrete solutions, again partnership with the private sector and financial institutions, and we are looking forward to see the results and as we build up to COP28. We are
one of the things
our tagline for that, it's going to be a cool COP.
A cool cop and a good cop. Instead of good cop, bad cop, you'll have good cop, cool cop.
Yes.
Because one of the things that was exciting about, I think it was, in Glasgow, for the first time, they talked about phasing down coal, and then in COP27 in Egypt, the first time, a lot of wording around energy efficiency. And so maybe this is part of a trend where the individual important sectors are actually getting the attention that they need.
Yes, and just to give you an example, one of the things that we are now also working with the teams to position and shed a very big spotlight on is the offshore wind. So we are looking into, again, the Global Alliance for Offshore Wind, and they're going to have a very good positioning when it comes to COP28 and working towards solutions. So back to what we said at the beginning, COP28 is going to be Solutions COP. Solutions COP needs to be targeting a focus on challenges. And that's basically the story of how the UAE is doing things. We identify a challenge, and then we need to find the solutions to it. And this is where the opportunities comes from. So, we are looking into specific technologies, specific sectors, and giving them a platform to provide solutions for them.
I very much like that approach. I've sat through a lot of sessions around the world, actually also in Abu Dhabi, where people have said, we need more finance. And at some point, you've got to say, for what? The finance has to assemble around solutions. So it sounds, you've used the word a number of times today, pragmatic, to actually start from the solutions and then work back to some of the finance and so on. So I'm looking forward to it. It sounds like it's going to be a good COP in the sense of moving the agenda forwards?
And technologies, Michael, because finance is important, yes, but technology is extremely, extremely important, and you know that more than anybody. We've looked into that with the new energy finance, and unless technologies are being available and also advancing in the same in the same scale that is that is the ambitious to it, we are not going to be able to reach, because there is an increasing energy demand globally. That's not going to stop. There is an increasing population globally. Hopefully, that's not going to stop. And it doesn't matter how much we are investing in supplying, unless we have technologies that is going to address demand, and we have a demand side management in different sectors, industries, cooling, building, etc., and all those pillars. We are not going to get to the 1.5 degrees. We definitely need, advancement in technologies, and that's why we look into COP as COP of opportunities. Because with the technologies advancement, you create jobs, you create talent, you create new know-how, and that's why we say we need to cut emissions, not growth. We need to cut the emissions, but we should not cut the growth, because we need that growth to create those opportunities.
Dr. Nawal, I can't let you go without touching on one final issue or topic or area that we've worked together, and that is gender. So there's an initiative which you were very involved in setting up called WISER. That's Women in Sustainability, Energy and Renewables.
Yes.
And also Dr. Sultan was very instrumental in setting it up.
Absolutely.
Can you describe what is it? How does it work for the audience?
So WISER meant to ensure that we are, just before we went online, you mentioned that you were struggling to find female speakers for your podcast. And that has been the challenge, that every time we go on a panel and we only find men on those panels, and people saying, oh, there are no women. And I was like, okay, so let's do something about that. There are no women. Let's ensure that there are more women in this sector. And if there are women and they are not known, maybe we need to position them, and we need to connect them, and we need to give them the platform. And this is why WISER was created. So it was created in a way to empower and engage more women in the sector. And it's focusing on different segment of we look into the youth by giving them opportunities of education and mentorship, but also the senior women by giving them opportunities and platforms to connect with the industry. And WISER started a few years back. Now it became a very important platform for thought leadership, publishing white papers about different topics every year. This year was clearly, there was a focus on climate action and the role of gender, and how we can have a gender lens when it comes to global solutions when it comes to climate challenges. So we have WISER pioneers, and this is basically the women graduates that get to be mentored and have internship opportunities when they start their careers. So it is a platform for mentorship, for sponsorship, for education, and also it's basically a place where you can find many extremely highly talented women who you can tap into to choose from as guests for your panels and for your podcast.
Very good. I feel I have to sort of defend cleaning up and the selection of guests, because I don't think I said we're struggling. I said, let me just give you the process that we've been through over the last sort of 2 years and a bit doing this. What I did was I made this sort of long list of all the friends of Michael that I would love to have on a podcast. And then I was so committed to the gender agenda that I made sure that I really reached out to the women and made sure that we had this fantastic, and they were incredible. We had Rachel Kite, we have Christiana Figueres, we've had Dami Lola, we had yourself, we've had
after
Emily.
2 years.
Sorry?
After 2 years, you thought of me.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the reasons is knowing, as soon as I heard that COP28 was likely to be in Abu Dhabi, I wanted to wait until it was before inviting you on the show. That's actually part of the background. But what happened was we accelerated quite a few of the women
Yes.
to be in the first. I was planning 4 seasons, 5 seasons. Suddenly we're in season 8. And yeah, I need to reach out to more women. I realize that, because if you look at this season and the end of last season, far too many men and not enough of these incredible, brilliant women leaders who I absolutely know are out there. And I can assure you we'll be reaching out and, bringing them in with your help and the help of Wiser.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I think it's very important. And joke aside, we've known each other for so many years, and one of the things that has been very important for both of us as champions and friends from this cause is ensuring women empowerment and engagement of women in the sector. We've looked into that. Even if you remember with the Zayed Sustainability Prize, when we realized that we are not having enough women candidates. So, we reached out and we ensured that we even when we go and film the finalists or the winners, that, there is clear representation of women there, because again, this is, this picture shows the importance of having these equal opportunities for all. So, it's something that is very, very important for me personally, but also for the UAE leadership. And as you see now, we have so many extremely powerful, very important, and very talented women in our cabinet, in our general council, but also as the 2 champions we have for the COP are both extremely talented women. We have our Minister of Youth, who is now the high-level champion for youth, and Her Excellency Razan, who is the president of ICUN, and also she is the executive director of the Abu Dhabi Environmental Agency. She's now our high-level champion for climate. So, very proud of them. And I know that around the world, we have so many women doing so many fantastic things that, they need to be recognized for. But what is important that they are part of this conversation. Our lead negotiator for the UAE is a young female, and she's a phenomenal lady in her sense, but also, her being there and the UAE delegation having a huge number of female negotiators is something that is very important for us.
And many of them mentored by you. Some of my happiest memories of visits to the UAE was working with your team, which was almost exclusively women, on the Zayed Prize when I was helping the jury.
Still the case.
It only really remains for me to thank you again for your time with us today. It's been wonderful catching up. You've got a busy year ahead of you. If there's anything that I can do in the run-up to COP28, I will certainly be there if I can be useful. And I look forward to working on all of those agendas. And I'm going to be honest, particularly on the last one. Maybe I can make amends for the fact that we've had a run of men on cleaning up by making sure that I am doing whatever I can to help the Wiser's agenda, as I'm sure it has a packed agenda that it'll be pursuing during COP28.
Absolutely. Well, we cannot do that alone. We appreciate and understand the importance of partnership and reaching out to subject matter experts everywhere, and you have been a friend and a colleague and a partner on many platforms, and we will definitely reach out to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So that was Dr. Nawal Al-Hosany, permanent representative for the United Arab Emirates to IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency. My guest next week is Achim Steiner, and he is Vice Chair of the UN's Sustainable Development Group and also Administrator of the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. Please join me at this time next week for a conversation with Achim Steiner. Cleaning Up is brought to you by Capricorn Investment Group, the Liebreich Foundation, and the Gilardini Foundation.